In this series, we're talking about dating and that idea we all have heard about, which is finding the one. Maybe not the forever one, but the one that we really want to be our one. Even though statistics tell us that most high schoolers aren't in a relationship right now, even if you've never been in a relationship, you're not interested in one right now, or not interested in being in one, somehow dating still feels like a big deal. It's because the idea of being more than just friends brings a lot of emotions and feelings with it. And feelings are a powerful thing that can mess with our perspective and be overwhelming. In fact, King Solomon, one of the most famous kings of Israel, wrote something that speaks to just how that is in the book of Proverbs. And he says, "A cheerful heart is a good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones." In other words, a sense of joy is the cure and medicine to feeling down. He didn't say the answer to having complicated, hurt, or disappointed feelings is found in a perfect life circumstance of getting what you want. The second half of that verse goes on to say, "A crushed spirit dries up the bones." A broken spirit will weaken you and wear you out. It's more than having a bad day or feeling bummed. A crushed spirit is letting a bad day or week become the way of life. The word crushed captures this perfectly. It refers to a feeling of being weighed down by unhappiness because of life circumstances. It's seeing all of life through difficulty, allowing your perspective to be controlled by what isn't going well. But whether you're feeling cheerful or crushed, I think what Solomon is saying is how you feel on the inside never just stays on the inside. It eventually seeps out into the rest of your life. Chances are some of you can relate. Some of you have noticed that your dating life or your lack of dating life is affecting the way that you feel about everything. And you wish you had a cheerful heart like Solomon says. But how do we get that? It's not like you can suddenly be thrilled that you're single. It's not like you cannot care that you just went through a breakup. It's not like you can deny how you feel and pretend everything is fine. Maybe you've heard your parents say things like, "You just need to change your attitude," or "Cheer up, kiddo." And you've wondered, is that even something people can do? Actually, a lot of writers who contributed to the Bible seem to think that there is a part that we can play when it comes to choosing a cheerful heart. Over and over, in different places and different circumstances, the writers of scriptures say things like rejoice, be glad, be of good cheer. And I imagine their original audience thought things like you and I do. They probably wondered things like, is that even possible? How does someone actually change how they feel when the life that they're experiencing is hard? One of the times we see this is in a letter from the Apostle Paul to the church of Philippi. Paul says this, "Rejoice in the Lord always. I say it again, rejoice." Another translation says, "Always be full of joy." For Christians around this time in history, being full of joy wasn't easy. They faced persecution, danger, and the potential of being harmed simply because they believed in and followed the ways of Jesus. Yet Paul calls them to rejoice, and then continued by reminding the readers some of the things they can do to make this happen. Then he says something that I think can be a game changer for you, especially if dating is anything else having you bummed out. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Basically, Paul is saying what you think about matters. Having a cheerful heart, not having a crushed spirit are both connected to what you think about. They're not simply affected by our outward circumstances, like whether we're dating or not, or feelings. Our feelings follow our thoughts. This is good news because it means that we have a lot more to control than we think. It doesn't mean that our circumstances or experiences don't bother us, but we have the power to decide whether that's going to affect us or not. We don't have to let things that disappoint or frustrate us dominate our thoughts. A bad moment doesn't have to turn into a bad mood, a bad day, a bad week, or what feels like a bad life. Just because one part of your life makes you unhappy, even if it's an important part, doesn't mean that all of your life is bad. Paul is telling us to make a shift in how we think, because when we don't change the way we think, we lose perspective. And a loss of perspective takes away our power. It gives over our circumstances. Before we know it, our circumstances crush our spirit. And when we say perspective, what we mean is this. Perspective is how you see a situation. A lost perspective means we take what feels bad in our life and it's how we see everything. So the choice is yours. It's okay to want to date. It's even okay to be frustrated by it. It's okay to not want to date, to feel separate from those who do, but it doesn't have to be the main thing that you focus on. It's time to pick a new perspective. That doesn't mean that you're going to suddenly feel differently, but it does mean that you decide to control what you can, and your attention, focus, and view of the situation is in your control. The truth is, no circumstance, dating or otherwise, is going to give you a cheerful heart you want. You're also not stuck with a crushed spirit just because things aren't going the way that you want them to in your dating life. You can change your attitude. You can focus on something more important because there's so much more happening in your life. There's so much more going on in your world. Sometimes it just takes a little effort to remind ourselves that. So let's practice for a second. Let's go back to what Paul wrote and take some cues from him. You don't have to answer out loud or in the comments, but in your mind, answer a few questions. What negative thing has your full attention right now? How do you feel about that? Why is it important to you? Now, before I move forward, I want to just remind you that it's important to feel your feelings, all of them, even the ones that aren't fun to feel. Here's the good news. Being able to name your not so fun feelings allow you to see difficult things and joyful things that can exist at the same time. Yes, you might have all sorts of feelings around negative circumstances that have your focus, but there's more to life than just that. All right? I want to show you what I mean. I want to ask you a few more questions, but before doing that, let me remind you of this. No matter what your dating status is or what you want it to be, you are a whole person just the way you are. You are not incomplete. You're not lacking. You're not less than. And you're not just killing time until the right person comes along. You, yourself, are enough just the way you are. And when you pick that perspective to start to form, no matter what the dating reality is that you're dealing with, you are far less likely to live with a crushed spirit. Now, to help kickstart the process of picking a better perspective, let me ask you some more questions. What is one thing going really well in your life right now? Who's one person you're grateful for? What's one thing that you're proud of yourself for? What's one thing God has done that makes you thankful? Chances are you can't answer all of those right now, but I'll bet one or two answers came to mind. Some really good things are happening in your world right now. So in the words of the Apostle Paul, think about such things. Let your mind stay there. It doesn't mean you ignore the difficult things or challenging things with dating or in life in general. It's just not your focus. As your focus changes, you may just find yourself feeling better about the dating scene because it's in a proper perspective. What would your life look like if you were living a hopeful perspective, even when you didn't feel like it? This is bigger than dating. There are all sorts of things throughout life that may tempt you to stay frustrated and angry. But when things aren't necessarily going the way that you want, I want you to know that you have more power than you think you do. Your dating circumstances and your life circumstances might change throughout high school. You can't control that, but you can control how you respond. You pick your perspective. Take it from Solomon, the wisest king who ever lived. Your heart is too important to leave it in a broken place.